The only thing that's happened is that the home element has been broken up because some of that division is now in the hearts and minds of many Americans. And it's caused a great divide in this country. And that's foolishness to me. Our Father is not about division. But let me tell you this story. There was a man who had children of his own, but his children grew up and they went out into the world and began to live their lives. And this man was still by himself, but he still desired to take care of somebody. So what this man did was he went and adopted 15 children of all races. And he adopted these children. They were about anywhere from the ages of 4 to 6. So we spent a lot of time with them, raising them, teaching them core values, staying up with them, suffering as they suffered, but still endeavoring to raise them. He had a hope for all of his children, all of the adopted children, plus his own. One day he asked of his older children, his natural children, if they ever wanted to, they could help to raise the 15 different children of all races. And so they did. And they gave him a hand doing things, and these children began to grow. And in certain areas of their lives, because they had different parents, they also had different ways of doing things. The man loved the diversity of all the children, but he noticed the children did not like the diversity of one another. And they continued to grow. And as they went to go do joint tasks, they loved each other when they were little. But as they grew and were educated, they noticed differences one to another. And they began to form ideas, dislikes, likes. And he noticed a bunch of traits began to form in these kids. Now, he adopted them, so they have no taught traits from their parents. But in their genes, certain likes and dislikes were surfacing. And he noticed this, and so he would continually sit them all down and talk to them about handling their differences and how they see each other. And so, with all of his efforts, he encouraged them to love one another. And as they grew, of course, they were educated until they got to the point where they developed their skill sets. And when you develop skill sets, you also become critical of other things. And so they hit that stage in life. They were about, 18 to 20. They hit a stage in life where they had become critical of one another. And they could then criticize how their brother or their sister was doing something. Now, as they did this, the man didn't really like it. And he knew where it was going. And so critically, he would talk to them critically about their youth, where they came from, how they all grew up together with the same teachings, how these differences are something that's embedded in them by way of their culture passed down through many generations. And it would be something they would have to overcome so they could continue to be family. But he warned them that the day they forgot of his teachings, their inherent traits of differences would grow. They would forget about him. They would become enemies. Time went on. All these children were about in their 30s. And two of the grown people now, they had a severe argument. And in the argument, they polarized the bunch. And still, some other children didn't like what those two children were doing. And so they split into 3 groups. The 3 groups no longer liked each other. The man who adopted all these children knew of all the stories, and it was hurting him to his heart. But they had to figure this out. He would encourage them, but he would not control them. Then one day, a grievous fight broke out because they started making fun of each other, casting down each other's ideas. They're all brothers and they're all sisters. And then ultimately the fight was so intensive that one killed another. The 3rd group came in defense of the one group saying, well, it's because, and they had a list of reasons. Well, it's because of this that they were killed. But as they did this, something curious happened. When they came up with all these reasons, people began to agree with them. And so some justified the destruction of one of their brothers and sisters, and some did not. But all of them wanted justice. And so they began to still yet polarize other people. Some, they wanted to get justice. That's all they wanted. And the other side, they wanted to establish things that they learned in their youth. And still yet another side thought it was awful, and that the only justice anybody would get was that all the children be policed. So they were severely divided. While all this was happening, the dad was broken into, but he had to let them figure this out. One day, a group of the children took the other person to court. And after court, the person was sentenced to life in prison for murder. And they clapped their hands. A group of them clapped their hands saying, we have justice. But the father was broken. They had become so polarized that they shoved aside that they were brothers and sisters raised by one father. They began to group by their cultures in many different groups, splitting up even more. They began to replicate throughout the world. Division settled in and wars started. And keep in mind, they were all related. The father's heart is broken. Why? Because they're killing each other, because they target one another. They got to the point where entire societies were formed off these children, still wanting something from the other, still judgmental, still pointing fingers, everybody wanting everything to operate after their manner, complaining and everything else, but they had forgotten that they had the same father. It got to the point where that information was no longer passed down. It wasn't important that they had the same father, and so deeper divisions were caused until one day it got to the point where it seemed everybody was at war with one another. At this time, the parent, being way up in age, much older than we can ever be, he finally stood up and conveyed to the world how heartbroken he was. And he conveyed that in a very special way that captured everybody's attention. And he recited their origins, who they really were. And when he did so in a way that everybody could hear him. But when he did this, everybody took note. And when they took note, many were deeply wounded internally, knowing that they had really been a part of something that they didn't want to be a part of. He began to point things out, and people began to see what they were doing, realizing they were related. Still, some of these people hated the fact that they were related to anybody because they had severed all the origin stories that they wanted to create their own. Being broken the way he was, he simply made a request. All of those who would like to be family again, come back to me. And many did, and the other portion did not. And from that day forward, all those who did not were in one world, and all those who did were in another. The moral of the story is this: as the children grew, the heart of the father was breaking in two. When they were calling for justice because of the murder of one of their brothers and sisters, the father was broken because his child was murdered. See, he doesn't see the children the same way the children see the children. A father sees a child as his child. So if that child dies by the hand of another, it's still heartbreaking. Still yet, if another brother or sister wants justice against him, that will break his heart even further because it's their brother. In the father's eyes, we're all his children. And to be in the world to want to win over the other side is to forget that we're really all part of one family. That's a missing piece in this day and age. People have forgotten, and they do disassociate themselves. They cannot see their brother or their sister. They parade in the streets at how many of the other people they're going to kill, how to get rid of this person. They have become experts on how to kill one another. It's called war. And every time they kill somebody, they bolster all those behind them. Yet the heart of the father breaks even more because they're still his children. The children of this earth have no idea how fractured society really is. They cannot see that we're of the family of humanity under one father. They can no longer see that. And soon the father will stand up, making his final decree. Does he want half of his children to never find a home again? Of course not. He delays and delays with a hope in us, giving us time to make a difference with other children. He gave us instruction. Yet we know it grieved God that he made man once. And the Bible clearly represents that this time he loved us so much that he sent the ultimate sacrifice. And still we hate our siblings. Earth is a house, one house with many rooms. And we plot and plan to destroy one another to take over the room. Still others want to be the head of the house to tell everybody else how to live according to their own genetic structure, whatever the reasons are. And we don't trust one another. We are of a dysfunctional house. Earth is a house that is no longer functional. It is dysfunctional. And to kill another human being in this world is to kill a child of the living God. And while people are parading that somebody is dead, or that somebody's going to suffer because of what they did to somebody else, and there's no forgiveness, only darkness is spreading. And the father's losing children because no one, hardly anybody. There's a handful, yes, those are the ministers. They're out there, they're trying. But it seems like in this day and age, if one side rules, the other side criticizes and tears down, and vice versa. We've hit a point where repair is no longer obtainable by us, not the repair the Father gave instruction of. So there's a move we can all make. The mindset of the world is to have you divided against yourselves. And indeed we are. We are because we look at skin color, heritage. We look at all the different factors that cause us to be different from somebody else, not realizing we're all of one family. This does not mean hold hands and sing a song together. No, this means a work must begin. Not a fake work, but a true work. This means it can start anywhere, and you don't need to wait on anybody. In fact, the difference happens one house at a time, one room at a time. It begins by remembering the ways of truth, not our truth, but our Father's truth. To understand Him, to seek a relationship with Him, to be concerned about what He thinks about us, not to point a finger at the other side saying they're holding us up, because I can tell you this, nobody is holding me up from doing anything. Nobody is holding you up either. Nobody can hold you up from doing anything. That is sound, and that's a biblical truth. But in that same regard, you do not need the government to make a major move. The major move begins with the individual. It is a brainwashing effect. It's quite delusional to believe that any major change of the world happened because everybody agreed to it. No. Change happens because small changes are noticed. Small changes that become persistent alter the course of the entire house. But people are programmed to believe in every divisive tactic they can possibly conceive of. We know who's behind it. Satan is. Satan is a driving force behind this division. And it's time that the Lord's true children consider the Lord and the Father and what He thinks about this situation, and indeed what He wrote about the situation, because God the Father wrote about this situation and He was not pleased. It's almost like today in the news, a female officer, she yelled the words you yell before you pull your stun gun, but she pulled out her gun and shot a young man and killed him. But she gave the alert, and indeed I believe that she had made it up in her mind that she was going to pull her stun gun. As you get older, sometimes you get confused, you do. And that happens a lot, by the way. And she pulled out her weapon and shot the young man, right? And it was fast. You could see the twitching of the officer. She didn't look at her hands and stuff and weigh it out, but I believe that was an accident. It's not the first time that accident happened. She was arrested today. She's on murder charges. Now, here's a disheartening fact. I've had friends, close friends, killed by gunfire, killed by grenades, killed by blister agent, killed by accidents. Close brothers, not biological brothers, but close brothers killed. Never once did I hate the folks on the other side, because there's one thing I realized, especially in war. There's another kid on the other side who likely feels a similar way that I do, but he has a different belief system. I was his enemy, he was my enemy. And we were told to go kill one another. I've had lots of people die by many means who I've been close to. Never once did I have a passion in seeing the other person die for killing another person. That's not in me. This vengeance is not in me. It's not justice that people are calling for. It's revenge. Let's make that clear. Justice is different than revenge. Justice is not taking or snuffing somebody's life out because they got somebody else's life. We're talking about an accident here. We're not talking about somebody who was on the street who purposely pulled a weapon, hunted somebody down and killed them. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an accident. And I want to point out just how aggressive people are becoming. Because when they found out this person was being arrested, people were clapping, hopping up and down in their seats, clapping their hands. When a narrative goes out and the narrative builds, it is very unfortunate to say, but we're so disconnected from the higher truths that we're starting and we're beginning to take pleasure in these things, these acts of violence. We're becoming so nonchalant about it, so predictive about these things, that it really looks like humanity is souring or spoiling. Listen, here's the issue. With loving your heart, you can't just automatically say that somebody knew what they were doing, they're guilty. Only with vengeance in your heart would you ever agree to not even listen to anybody and to just point out and say that person's guilty no matter what. That is vengeance. Justice is associated with the truth, not vengeance. Justice is to see, did she know what she was doing? Was it really a mistake? Has she had more mistakes? And if so, then she needs to confess. She needs to admit she's got a problem. But if not, then they need to make sure that doesn't happen again. Some redesigns of the entire package officers carry to be more efficient so that mistake can't be made again. Justice is to correct the problem. Justice is to ensure it does not happen to another person. That's justice. Justice is not hanging a person. That is not justice. That is revenge. And it's so unfortunate to say that so many people have been given over to hate. You know, in the Bible it says, the love of many is going to wax colder and colder. It also says that the love of many is going to wax cold because iniquity abounds. You know what that means? People's hearts are going to grow cold because too many people are getting away with things on a person-to-person level outside of uniformed officers. This fear and vengeance tactic, this dividing philosophy, because you have half the people scared and half the people are so vengeful. It's a recipe, it's a poison that's gotten into society. The government cannot fix that. You know who can fix that? You can. That's not the government's place to fix that. They can't do it. If they could, they would have done so. The states cannot fix that. If they could, they would have done so. They can't even recognize it. They won't even acknowledge it. But clearly, it's a mob mentality in the world on both sides of the fence. For those who are law enforcement, they're starting to do the same things. It's almost like everybody has lost their temperament. They can't control themselves. The Word of God is clear on how people will become, but it's spreading. The programming part comes in, and it should be obvious that more and more people desire vengeance no matter what. I'm stupid for even talking about this subject because I know I'll be hated simply by talking about the subject. Because a saint, somebody with the love of God in them on this earth, you don't walk around hugging everybody. You employ love everywhere you go. Love is not some emotion that people feel. The emotion that you feel is the residue of love. Now, we're not talking about between husband and wife either, because you have lust and you have love. Lust is when you desire a person physically. Love is when you're willing to lay your life down for that person who does not deserve it. That's love. Lust is different. But as a saint, you are an authorized vessel of love, and you're also authorized to spread it all over the place. And it is missing in this world, but it's so hidden, so rare, it's almost unidentifiable. Things are incredibly dark. They're not bright. They're dark because people are living their lives like machines. Have you noticed? In government, they really believe that if they do A, B, and C, everybody's okay, everybody can live with that. And what they have done is they've made a list. There's a list in every single country, and they say, conform to this. We can all live in peace by these procedures. That's not living life. That's life disassociated from common morals that the Lord has departed to all of us spiritually. Can you see what's happening? Do you see that people are doing things by procedure, not by love? And if you don't believe me, you can befriend somebody in the world and be the best of friends. But as soon as you cause them some sort of trauma, they're going to sue you. They're going to throw away years of friendship and go after you. Anybody who breaks one of their rules are going to hunt them down, and they won't give up until they have what they call justice on both sides. I know it's true we live in an unequally racist country. Let's face it, it's racist. People in their own homes, they're racist a little bit to a degree. They don't like certain types of people. Everybody is to a degree, some more than others. And some people have gotten together and made groups out of it. So let's just go ahead and face it. I don't like every type of person. I love them. I don't like them. I don't like what they do. I don't like what they stand for, but I love them. The difference is, I cannot like how you engage yourself in the world, where your path is going, what you speak about, how you live your life. I cannot like that, but I love you. And because I don't like that, that means I will never do it myself, but I will always be there for my family. And your family is your fellow man. It is a denial of the principles, the rudimentary principles of the living God, to hate your brother. If you hate your brother, there is no God in you whatsoever. You're devoid of it. People are programmed to follow procedures in a group, and if anybody outside of that group tries to penetrate, they're programmed to hate them. We're programmed to follow a rule set, not moral rules, but social rules. And if you break those rules or cross a line, it's the mob again. You know how in the black and white movies they used to get the mob together and go hunt down Frankenstein? That's what we face today on both sides, on all sides. Why is it that if any group you can name in the world, just about all of them are complaining about another group? Let me tell you something. Godly groups do not complain. They fight the good fight of faith. That's what they do. They don't complain, point fingers at somebody else. They fight the good fight of faith. And to fight the good fight of faith is when everybody stops believing, and when everybody stops walking the path of Christ, and when everybody stops loving, and when nobody believes in miracles, and when people can't stand to read the word, that you remain faithful, that you fight the good fight, which means you're fighting through everything of your flesh, everything of your mind, everything of anything that would cause you to cast down the path Jesus set before you. Anything that would fight love. You are fighting that within yourselves to keep your faith, to press forward. If nobody represents Christ, you fight the good fight of faith by being an example of Christ, always showing and telling somebody about the light by the way you live your life. Listen, and get off of the perfect thing. Stop looking for perfect people. The Bible tells us that when Jesus comes, after he comes, we shall be perfected. We will not be perfected prior to his arrival. All of us are full of filth, but we have a choice to fight the good fight of faith, regardless if you're full of filth or not. Fight the good fight of faith. That's what a saint is. I don't know about you. I do not choose to follow the paradigm of this world that picks a side and then creates an enemy out of thin air for any reason that's in a rule book. I'm not doing that. Nobody is going to tell me who my enemy is. I have but one enemy. He's an adversary called the devil and Satan. My fellow man will never be my enemy. But most people are programmed the other way. And now it's turned into a real fight. You're going to witness people happy at the death of another. People happy at the ruined life of another. People excited and shaking hands. They're doing listen, when the two witnesses in the Bible, when the two witnesses fall dead in the streets of Jerusalem, in the city, they start giving gifts to one another. They're doing that now. Not with the two witnesses, but for anybody who falls victim to this mob mentality on all sides. Haven't you noticed? I need not go through a list, but I'm telling you the mindset that people had in the Bible that's supposed to, that's with the two witnesses. People have it right now. You don't think that we're living at the door of the close of this whole show? And it's on all sides. Do you all see that? It's with conservatives. It's with the Democrats. It's with the blacks. It's with the whites. It's with the Asians. It's with the Mexicans. It's with every subject out there. All of it is a polarizing subject, and everybody's exercising flesh in the back of it, trying to justify it through the death of another, every single side. The only place I can stand in confidence is the kingdom of the living God, which is born within us, not outside. It's inside.